There's a strange rule at the heart of the universe, not in a metaphorical way but a scientific one. Particles don't exist as particles until something observes them. Until then, they're waves, probabilities, clouds of potential, not real in any fixed form. This is not spiritual poetry, this is quantum physics. It's called the observer effect, and it changes everything. At the smallest level of existence, the world isn't made of things, it's made of possibilities. And those possibilities don't collapse into reality until they are interacted with, measured, watched. In other words, nothing exists until you look at it. This isn't just a theory, it's been tested, repeated, and confirmed in experiments like the double-slit test. When no one's watching, matter behaves like a wave, spread out, undefined, but the moment it's measured, the moment someone observes, it becomes a point, a particle, a thing. So the act of observation brings the world into form. Now step back. What does this mean for you? It means that reality is not fixed, it is responsive, it is interactive. The world doesn't just exist around you, it reacts to how you perceive it. It's not that your thoughts magically create reality like a wish. It's that your attention collapses possibility into experience. You don't live in a universe of solid facts, you live in a field of potential. And what you focus on becomes your truth. This is why the mystics and scientists are finally starting to speak the same language. What the sages called conscious creation, the physicists are calling wave function collapse. What the Taoists called the formless Tao, quantum theorists now call the unified field. Different words, same pointing, and the message is this: reality is not waiting to be discovered, it's waiting to be collapsed into being, by you. Most people treat attention like a flashlight. You point it at something, you notice, you move on. But attention isn't neutral, it's not just observing what already exists. It's choosing which reality gets to exist. Here's what the science shows and the mystics knew long before it was measurable. The universe is not made of stuff. It's made of energy in relationship to awareness. Until you give something attention, it remains undefined. And once you do, it stabilizes. It becomes real in your field of experience. This is why two people can live in the same house, work the same job, walk the same street, and yet live in entirely different worlds. Not because one is wrong, but because each is collapsing different aspects of the field into form. So when you say, "This always happens to me, I never get the good opportunities, people just don't listen to me," you're not just describing life, you're projecting a frequency that begins to stabilize that version of the world, not magically, energetically, by repeated attention. This isn't law of attraction, it's law of observation. Whatever you feed with attention begins to exist more fully, not just mentally but energetically. You bring it into the grid of your personal reality. You collapse the wave of infinite possibility into a pattern you recognize, and the more you recognize it, the more real it becomes. This is why presence is so powerful, because the less distracted you are, the more pure energy you're directing into each moment. And the moment responds, not because it obeys you, but because it's built to mirror your participation. Here's what most people miss. The universe doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you repeatedly observe. Wanting is mental. Observation is energetic. And the deeper your attention goes, the more the field begins to take shape around it. If this is shifting how you see reality, hit like button and subscribe to Digital Mind. We create content that doesn't just explain, it opens. And this is only the beginning. Long before quantum mechanics, long before double-slit experiments and particle accelerators, the mystics already knew, where you place your attention, reality takes shape. But they didn't call it science. They called it presence, discipline, sacred awareness. To them, attention wasn't just a skill, it was a form of worship. Because to look at something without distortion, without projection, without control, without ego, was to let truth reveal itself. Not forced, but unfolded. This is why meditation exists, not to escape the world, but to see it as it is, without collapsing it into fear, story, or memory. Because every time you look at the world through a lens of judgment, past, or identity, you're not seeing the field. You're seeing a reflection of your conditioning. and that reflection becomes your world. So the mystics trained their mind like a laser, not to think faster, but to observe more purely, because they knew what quantum science now confirms. Observation alters reality, and clarity of observation alters it more powerfully. Your inner state doesn't just color what you see, it shapes what appears. If your attention is calm, the field responds with coherence. If your attention is scattered, the field remains chaotic. If your attention is loving, the field reveals patterns you couldn't see before. This is not positive thinking. This is energetic alignment. Not emotion for emotion's sake, but emotion as frequency tuning. So ask yourself, what are you constantly looking at? Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, energetically. Because that's the version of reality you are agreeing to reinforce. You are not just living inside a universe. You are in relationship with the field, moment by moment. And that field? It listens through attention. It speaks through reflection. It is not solid. It is not fixed. It is the mirror of your perception. So if attention shapes reality, what kind of world are you building? Because every time you observe something with fear, doubt, or judgment, you reinforce that version of the field. Not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. You've just been using your power unconsciously. Here's the shift. You don't create new reality by forcing it, you create it by observing differently. Not with affirmation, not with fantasy, but with presence. Because presence doesn't project, it receives, and that receiving changes everything. When you look at the world without a story, without trying to fix it, prove something, or protect yourself, you stop recycling the past. You stop collapsing the old wave, and you give a new pattern permission to emerge. This is how you collapse a new timeline. This is how you start to feel something shift, not because your life changed first, but because your seeing changed. And when you see with clarity, the field begins to organize around that. The mystics didn't need to control the future. They knew the future didn't exist. Only the now collapsing into form, guided by the frequency of their awareness. So they stopped trying to make it happen. They became open space so that life could reveal something they'd never imagined. That's real power, not willpower, witnessing. So here's the invitation. Stop trying to manifest. Stop trying to control what you don't fully see. Instead, learn to look again. Look with stillness. Look without the lens of lack. Look without needing to name or fix. Because when your attention becomes clean, the field responds with clarity. And that's when the illusion of separation dissolves. Not because you figured it out, but because you stopped collapsing the old world with old eyes. Drop a comment below. What's one pattern you're ready to stop collapsing into form, just by seeing it differently? Subscribe to Digital Mind if you're not here to escape the matrix, but to watch it reconfigure around your presence. This content is for insight and education only, not a substitute for scientific, psychological, or medical guidance. Trust your own direct experience above all.